Hello, and thank you for joining me for this quick conversation. I'm really excited about this one because I'm joined by a fantastic educator and a good friend from Copenhagen. I'd love to introduce you to Christoffer, who'll tell you a little bit about himself.
Thank you for having me, Jacob. I'm Christoffer. I'm working in Makerspace nearby Copenhagen, where I'm a teacher and a Makerspace consultant working from kindergartens to our public schools, how to integrating technologies more meaningful into our students' lives.
Fantastic. So before we get too far into our conversation, could you just briefly explain what Speak Screen does and how the speech controller is used on an iPad?
The way our students are using the speech controller is that they have this little button where you can control should it be full visible or a lower opacity. But our students have learned if they click once, they can have read aloud their full screen. So if they have done a keynote presentation or a book in pages, they can, with simple one click, have it all been reading aloud for them. But for our persons with the dyslexia, they got the opportunities to double click on the function, because then they can simply manage with the finger pointing at a feature and have explained what is that kind of tool. So it's a way making people more independent when working with it. But also for our teachers, they have plenty more time now to assist with the content of the teaching rather than helping with technologies.
So it sounds a lot to me like this speech controller, where it actually reads the text written on your screen, is almost acting as a digital teaching assistant to support the children who perhaps are finding reading the words more challenging.
Yes, definitely. But also at home, we have a lot of students with families where Danish isn't their main language. This way, we give the students a powerful tool when they have to work with a school task at home, where they necessarily can't get the support they need for the task. So this way, we try to show it to the families at our school events. This is a tool you can use as a student for having the words read aloud. So it's a way combining both the school activities, but getting a foundation to learn at home as well.
That's really fascinating. So you're actually, as a school, introducing this to your parents and to your families, so it can have benefit not only in the classroom, but also at home. It's something that makes learning accessible for everyone. So before we get too much into our conversation, let's just have a quick look at how our viewers at home and in their classrooms can enable this onto their iPad. To enable this, we're going to jump into the Settings app, and then from here on the left-hand side, we're going to find Accessibility. Then on the Accessibility Options page, we're going to tap onto where it says Spoken Content. From here, the toggle we're looking for is called Speak Screen. And in its most basic working state, if I take two fingers and swipe down from the top of my screen, as if I was bringing up the notification center but with two fingers, iPadOS will read the contents of my screen to me, just like this.
Speak selection off. A speak button will appear when you select text. Speak screen on. Swipe down with two fingers from the top of the screen to hear the content.
This is a very useful tool, but it might be in your classroom you want to fine-tune it slightly. And this is where the option called the speech controller comes in. We had that floating toolbar a moment ago, but when it finishes reading it disappears forever. Well, not if you enable speech controller. So on here we're going to tap on that little toggle icon. I can also customize some shortcuts for this. So if I long press or double tap on the little minimize icon, I can have it do different things. I quite like doing the double press to read a certain part of the screen when you tap on it. Now once you've enabled this, you can then leave the app completely, and you'll have that little floating square with you wherever you go. Tapping on this will bring up the full speak screen options, and double tapping and long pressing will do those shortcuts that you've just set up. So that means in this Pages document here, if I long press on that little floating box, I'll then have the whole page read aloud to me like this.
Body. Hi Year 6. Sorry, but I'm not going to be in school for the next few days as I'm not.
And I can use the pause command on screen to pause that reading at any point. If I jumped into a different app, maybe we'll go back into settings just to demo this, and then I double tap on that shortcut, it will then read aloud the part of the screen that I tap on.
Sentence color, yellow. Siri and search.
And this very quickly becomes a really useful tool for reading aloud any menu options or any settings. So now you've seen how easy it is to enable this feature. You're probably wondering, well, how can I use this in my classroom? So Christoffer, could you explain briefly what an example of this would be, perhaps in a lesson that you're doing in your class?
If we take the earliest learners at schools, it would be you can use the talk-to-speech functions in Pages, creating your own stories or fairy tales, and then you can share it with AirDrop to one of your students in class, and that way they can have it all read aloud by simply click it once. So that's a powerful tool doing peer-to-peer works in classes where the teachers, again, like I said before, can have a focus on the content and create more quality into the students' work, because the technical stuff here is super accessible.
I think that's fabulous. And, the fact that it can span the whole age range of working in a school. I know as a teacher that I can never get around to all 30 children at the same time. With the best will in the world, there can't be 30 in a classroom. I don't think it will fit, actually, even if we tried. But you can't be there to support at every moment. And having something like this, where it removes that barrier for not understanding a word, being able to hear it, be able to get a different version of it, it's a really powerful tool. And we saw earlier that it's just a couple of taps to enable.
I think when talking about this function, we also have to think about having a class conversation about it, because it can activate a lot of noise in classes. So when are we using this function, and when can we have set it all up with our classroom? So when are the teacher going to mute the iPads, and when is it possible for the students to use this function? So it's a fantastic tool, but you also have to facilitate the conversation about how do we use this tool and when do we use this tool.
I think that's really interesting what you just said about how actually as a class there's having that open discussion about how to some students this is a central learning tool, whereas for others it's an optional support structure that's there for them. And I think actually being able to differentiate that is really important in the class as well.
It's just super, super important that we are able as teachers to facilitate those talks, because it's easier for other students knowing why I'm able to use it now. And it's with a purpose. It makes it easier going from school to the breaks and being able to have great activities together, because we are trying to keep it less frustrating for other students, because they know we are different and it's okay to be different.
Of course it is. And that's such a powerful thing for every student to learn, isn't it? So my last question then, to wrap up this really interesting conversation, I'm sad to see it end so quickly, but it is a quick conversation, so I kind of have to do it, I'm afraid. For any educators who haven't encountered this feature before, what advice would you give them in terms of exploring its potential, either personally for them or in their classrooms, in their settings?
It's definitely having the possibility to have a supervisor with you inside the teaching. It's possible in Denmark because we are having the possibilities to have a team meeting before, having discussions. What are your purposes with bringing those tools inside to your classroom, and what do you expect happening afterwards? Because then we have the talks on which of the tools at the accessibility features on iPad we could bring into the classroom, but also choose a few tools. Because if we choose a lot of tools, we will forget them afterwards as students and teachers. So it's super important having a conversation about which tools, and can we lower the numbers of them so we can integrate them better into the students' lives.
That's such an important point. And I think with this series of quick conversations where we're looking at lots of different accessibility features, it is very much a case of thinking what works for me in my context, what works for my students. And no one should be enabling every single accessibility feature because it's just not necessary. So actually thinking, is this going to have a benefit? What purpose does it serve? They're really important questions to ask as a school team, aren't they? Look, Christoffer, thank you so much for joining me and sharing this really insightful conversation. I've learned a lot about Speak Screen and how you use it in your classroom, and I'm already thinking about ideas that I can use. So thank you so much for sharing this really powerful accessibility feature with us.
Thank you, Jacob.